All right. So we are recording. All right. Welcome, Barnaby Andersun of CleanGold.io to Radiant Creators. And Barnaby has got quite a cool company, quite a cool project that he is creating. And we were introduced by David Devine, another friend of the show. And David Devine has interviewed Barnaby also. And so this is an industry that I'm not completely familiar with, but is definitely interesting. I do make my living trading crypto, so I'm definitely in it every day, all the time. And this type of stable coin that Barnaby is offering, is creating, and I wouldn't exactly call it a stable coin. I'll let you correct me there because I think it's a little bit different than that. Let's just get started with, hello, Barnaby. Tell us a little bit about yourself. We'll get started, and we're going to help everybody figure out and understand what CleanGold.io is. And let's just start there. Who are you? How did you come to the creation of basically an asset-backed or a gold-backed cryptocurrency?
Great. Well, it's great to be here. Thanks so much, Craig. Thank you
You're
for
welcome.
that warm introduction. And yeah, it was really awesome. Dave Devine's been a good friend of mine actually over the years. So we met up. We were both in Chiang Mai. I've been living in many places around the world, and Chiang Mai was one of my favorites. And Dave came. He was living in Taiwan, and we both had a big passion for blockchain and cryptocurrencies. And but he's obviously also got a massive passion for gold. And so when he heard that I was working on setting up a gold platform like this that was on blockchain, essentially acting as a cryptocurrency, then he was particularly interested. So that's how I got connected there. That's how this introduction with you has happened. So my background is in technology for like more than 28 years, working professionally. Most of that, the vast majority of that, as an entrepreneur since '95 in e-commerce. Essentially, that's what really got me excited, was the potential for new forms of commerce in the world. This is back in the mid '90s, and so I had to really learn what the internet was. I was there at the beginning, like building websites, and then eventually that turned into apps and other platforms. And so, but I also had a real fascination for the nature of commerce as well, and essentially what that meant for banking, central banking, like how the world worked, what was the value of money really about. I'm sure you can understand where I'm coming from. So that was back in the '90s, and then all the way through in the 2000s. So I started really cottoning on to how the world systems was working, and I was like, wow, and there was actually, even back in the '90s, there were a few attempts at making a gold currency. Essentially, there was one that was called e-gold. So I was always fascinated by all of that. And so then when Bitcoin came along, I started just checking it out back in 2011 probably. But I didn't get actively involved because I missed that. Like, I was kind of too much of a geek, I guess you'd say, too on the tech side. And so I kept on watching it, and then its price went crazy, and then so eventually I just pivoted my whole operation into blockchain, into cryptocurrencies for the last 5 years. Doing a whole bunch of different things. Trading like you, owning cryptocurrencies, managing launches of digital projects. So all of that. So I've been very passionate about the difference that this could make to people's lives, decentralization, having custody over your own money without it being controlled by central operators. That's been a big passion of mine. And just the difference. And basically, because when else in history have people been able to generate their own currencies and have something decentralized? That's just incredible. Like, I don't think that's happened before. And so the currencies have always been obviously the control mechanism of a society. And probably actually like early on in the history of the US, like I'm talking like 200-300 years ago, there were competing currencies. I thought that was a really interesting history. So there were competing currencies back then, and then it all got centralized. And so my background also, I'm an Australian, so I'm not from. I was born in Sydney, Australia, and so I have a daughter. She's doing a PhD. So I've done many things in my life. And I spent the last 7 years exploring the world because and running my digital operations. So I know how to manage teams remotely. So actually, I've been managing teams, building businesses remotely since probably like on that side since 2005. So 15 years having multiple teams working digitally for me across the world in different projects. So it's funny that the world now has caught up to operating how I do, where everybody's kind of on Zoom or texting and remotely talking to people. That's how I've been living for decades. And so inside of all of that, with my passion for new currencies, and I realized so that the average person, to be honest, in my opinion anyway, is that they're probably not going to get the value proposition of Bitcoin. I don't think that, or cryptocurrencies. I think it's a big stretch. This is such a massive technological breakthrough to go and talk to somebody and say, hey, like buy into Ethereum, buy into Bitcoin. They're like, what's it backed by? Oh, it's backed by code. What do you like? They don't get it. And so, and there's only, maybe 50 to 100 million people in the world that have active crypto wallets. Maybe, you can update me on that. So that's not very many. And so there's a much broader community of people who own precious metals, principally gold and silver. And so it got me really thinking, like, well, what would happen if we really want to make a difference? What's a kind of an asset that everybody understands the value of? Well, it's gold. Everybody, the whole world, for thousands of years. And so if you could take gold and connect it on the blockchain, that'd be interesting. And if you were able to hold that in a digital wallet, if it was transferable, exchangeable, backed by a real asset that was redeemable, you could redeem. So you could either use it digitally or have a physical redemption, and as a one-to-one basis with the value of gold. And so then I was going to launch all of that, and I had everything set up to go, and I had the APIs connecting to gold vaults, etc. And then COVID hit. So with COVID hitting in March, what that meant was the supply chains around the world were really impacted. So there was a big interruptions across many, many industries, including precious metals, including gold. The three biggest refineries out of Switzerland essentially were shut down. And as you know, flights all over the world being stopped. So then the shipments of gold and precious metals. So then when I was dealing with the gold dealer, I was like, so can we get the gold to the people? And they were saying, oh yeah, we should be able to. And I was like, oh, that's not a very good premise to launch a gold-backed currency. So then I went hunting, and through connections, I was introduced to a gold mining operation that was basically out of Perth, out of Western Australia. So me being an Australian, that was I knew that that's one of the major exports out of Australia. And so here was a mining operation that wanted to actually tokenize. They already were wanting to do that. So we joined forces. So I basically partnered up to launch this gold-backed digital asset, and it was direct to them from the mines. So no middleman. And so obviously mining operations, they're profitable. So that means that they're doing that because it's a business, and so there's some profit there. So basically that's well, let's launch this with a discount. So a discount. So at a time when gold is very scarce, and where people are even selling it to get a hold of physical gold, there's a premium on it. So it's very hard to get, increasingly so. And essentially, so here we are with a mining operation, and yes, it's beginning. The mining has actually begun, and it uses this. The other bonus was that it uses this incredible clean technology. So basically, that's why it's called CleanGold.io. And so they'd already spent the last decade or so, and many millions of dollars, basically developing a mining that doesn't use toxic chemicals, doesn't use cyanide, doesn't use mercury. Like, I don't know if you know that, like, one gold ring has typically about 20 tons of waste associated with it. Toxic waste, one gold ring. So that's how much waste is involved in the mining industry. And people don't know this. Like, I didn't know that. And so how can we clean this up? I would say that we really need to clean up the world. We need to clean up our act. We need to clean up mining, because mining's not stopping. There's so many minerals and in every gadget that we have, and it has an importance. Even gold. So they have gold in many electronics, etc. Obviously, so it has a real utility. And apart from that, people love it for its value sake. It's been a traditional hedge. So again, like, as we move into more uncertain times, I'm sure everybody would agree that these are pretty uncertain. And so and obviously you and I, people like us, we understand technology, cryptocurrencies, the value of that, but it has these wild swings. Obviously, like even today, like it's been swinging out crazy, and so because it's a very new asset, cryptocurrencies, that's why they're so volatile, because people haven't been able to establish like a value for them. It's still it's market discovery, and it is getting less volatile, but it's not like gold. And gold has been on a tear, a bull run, all this past year, because I would say that essentially there's concern in the marketplace for the value of that. And is it actually that gold is going up, or is it that there's concern around the US dollar and the US dollar is dropping in value? That's an interesting thing to contemplate. So I would say that, and many financial advisors, smart people, they do recommend people have a portion of their portfolio in gold. Something around 3%, 5%, or obviously or more or less. So it's up to each person. I'm not a financial advisor, so I just wanted to preface that. I'm not advising anybody to buy gold or buy Bitcoin. Don't listen to, but I'm telling you about what I'm seeing and what I'm passionate about. And so that's really the basis of it, is like how to help people get direct access to a mining operation where they can get gold at a discount, which is amazing at these times, deliverable for next year once the mining is like fully underway. So it is getting started. We've already produced gold coins, physical gold coins, each one at 50 grams. So it's a tokenized gold-backed digital asset per gram at a discount, and redeemable for physical gold coins in a year, in Q4 2021. So that's a long way of me answering all those questions. How was that?
Oh, it's great. That's great. It's a great place to start. And it's good because many people that we interview, it's never simple. It's not like you're interviewing a simple person. I should not say simple, but let's say a carpenter, and you say, well, tell me about a 90-degree angle. How would you cut that? You know what I mean? It's never, a lot of people are doing, I love carpentry, but I'm just saying, some interviews are easy than some, and more as we go along with the show, we're interviewing people that are so multifaceted and doing so much that we go, let's just start talking, because it'll all come out. We'll just work on it, But what you're saying is very true about gold. And one thing I'll ask is what, and it's, you sent a presentation that's actually really cool. I was looking at it, and one thing that you mentioned in the gold market review here is why gold has always been the primary store of value and why it's surging again. Now, but before I ask you just maybe a little bit about why gold has always been kind of our primary store of value, because since that's kind of like the core of the crypto that you're creating, I'll definitely ask that. But I do want to reference you put some good charts in here, and you can see that, if people can see that who are watching the video, yes, gold has been gaining value, but also you look at the purchasing power of gold versus the purchasing power of the dollar. And I think it's important for people to realize that we do look at gold against the dollar to understand, or against whatever currency that, your country uses. But, the value of gold is really beyond the momentary, exchange rate with the currency of a country, like, gold versus USD, gold versus the Australian dollar, the AUS, I think it is, or
AUD.
AUD, yeah, AUD, like those values exist and they vary, and it's great. You can see that they go up over time, but really that value of gold is almost like transcendent of the momentary value against a particular currency, because that fiat currency of a country is going to come and go, you might say, but gold won't. And so one of the things about gold that's always intrigued me, I'll ask you, and you might know historically the answer to this, or it might be more opinion or a mix, but why do you think gold has been humanity's primary store of value for so long, or maybe like forever, as far as I know, ever since we could find it and melt it and give it to each other?
Yeah, so it's a great question. And inside of that, you were talking about the value proposition of gold against fiat currencies, and you probably well know that historically, every fiat currency has gone to zero, and that is obviously lost on most people. I don't mean, unfortunately, I think most people, they don't really understand the workings of money, and because it's not obvious, and so people just take.
Yeah, they just don't think about it, and we don't live that long. So if you only live like 30 years, you haven't seen you like for instance the U.S. dollar or the Australian dollar go away. So it's just not in
Mhm.
people's experience. Yeah, if we lived like 500 years, then everybody would know, right?
Totally. So basically, like, yeah, fiat currencies have come and gone, and but gold hasn't. So like the US dollar's been around for a couple of hundred years at least, and so and its value. And if you look at those charts that are in that report, it was actually quite a stable value for a long time because it was gold backed. So what we can actually see here that's in the last 100 years. It was before that. So in the 20th century, yeah, US dollar value tanked in purchasing power. But before that, it wasn't really. And that's because it was gold backed. And so the leaders of the forefathers of this nation, of the US and of many countries, they had some insight. They were like, well, let's use paper receipts as backed up for gold in the vault. So that's actually how money was working. So the history of money there was that well, people, over thousands of years, they did use, some groups used shells and some used, wood. They used different things as value propositions, but basically, once they started minting gold coins, and it was King Alytus in Lydia. He basically minted the first gold coin, and because obviously they were looking for something that was rare. It was like, okay, so it's not that common to find gold. You had to dig it up, and basically he was the king, and so the king, he can issue money, and so he found that this was an amazing. It was basically a huge technological breakthrough that this King Alytus of Lydia. Can you imagine just inventing coins and making them gold? So there probably were already coins, and that they probably maybe the first coins coming out of China. I can't remember, but he was the first one recorded as minting gold coins. And this technological breakthrough, he was the one producing them because he was the king, and so he had mines. And then because he was able to pay them, and the whole society started operating like that, he was able to pay the army. So if you've got an army and then you've got mines, you've got a power base, right? Like you're actually able. Can you imagine? Like now you've got real power because you have men with arms and you're producing the value proposition for the society that now you've got everybody using. And then he was able to basically invade other nations and get more soldiers. And so it was a self-fulfilling prophecy that the more gold he got, the more men he could hire who could increase the kingdom, and that became a model. You'd have to say that was like more than 2,000 years ago. That became a model that kings and leaders have been using ever since. And so when you're asking why, I mean, gold, it is curious that that why that one, because there are even other more precious metals, uh, palladium, there's quite a lot of them, and platinum and etc. So the gold sort of took a special place, like it's the king's money, the king's choice. And for that reason, and I guess many people find it very attractive. It's a shiny object, and so, but it has actually it's stood the test of time, that for these thousands of years, it has remained a highly sought after uh, object. And I don't know if you know, but like the total amount of gold that's been mined, extracted from the earth for all of these thousands of years, they calculate that it's about a bit less than 3 Olympic swimming pools. And so, and there's about roughly $10 trillion of value in the world. So compare that to the crypto market, which is, not even, it's about less than half a billion, half a trillion sort of thing. So the gold market is huge, but what's available to actually purchase and operate with is probably maybe 10% of that. And so basically people have been hoarding gold, not just people, but countries. So like, China and Russia, India, these places, these governments have been buying vast amount, as much gold as they basically can. And if you look at the charts of countries buying gold, it's been increasing this decade. And they still say that the US has the largest, the US government that has the largest amount reserves. That could be the case. So because it's and China has a huge reserve, and I guess these are official figures, so it does get interesting that they use gold as a mechanism of power, and they have historically used it to back the value of their currency. And with a currency, then they're able to produce and manufacture and have power in the world. So I don't know if that answers some of those points that you are.
No, it does, because it's really quite the you might say, like, we could have a room full of historians and philosophers, and it would take, it could be a conference that took days to even start to approach, why has gold always been our store of value. But I like your take on it, because I did not know about the king who first actually minted the first gold coin, and that it's kind of funny. It's sort of, gold kind of brought with it the beginning of empire. You know what I mean? It's like mixed blessing in some ways, And yeah, it's funny how we like gold, because there are assets that are commodities that are even more value, like platinum and such. And you wonder, but why don't we think about platinum very much? And you're right. Now, for people who are trading, and traders are all, one of the things I like about trading is the way people think, the way traders think. They're just unique people. And the longer you do it, you get to see the world like in unique ways that most people they're just not thinking of. And I think that countries buying gold, and then of course the idea of countries wanting their gold back from a different country, etc., it makes the news kind of sort of vaguely, but these are a big deal, like for people who are traders, and they start realizing, wait a second, I mean, China and Russia are basically buying all the gold they possibly can. Then you start wondering, well, what for? Well, and who's got that? The government or the people? Well, the government's got it. The people don't. It's like Russia's not buying it. Their government is buying it for their purposes. So it's very interesting. And I think that many people might not know where you've got, like you mentioned in your report, FDR's, it was like 1933, FDR's executive order makes it illegal to hold gold coin, bullion, or certificates. That happened, of course. Mr. Franklin Delano Roosevelt did that. But also in 1971, this one always has shocked me, and you can hear him talk about it on YouTube when he did his presidential announcement of this in 1971, when Nixon closed the gold window. Let's see, the way you put it, but Nixon basically, I think it was 1971, or was it 73 or 4?
71.
71. He decoupled the U.S. dollar from its gold backing. And when you listen to Nixon, talk to the American people about it, he makes it sound like this is the best thing ever. And it's like, no, it wasn't, And so you think about the value of gold and how it's always been our, primary currency through all time. And then you think, wow, like FDR said, hey, Americans, you can't have it now to some extent. And then also, which is just crazy. That's nuts. You can't have the primary store of value that all of history has used. And at the same time, you've got Nixon going, the dollar, I'm telling you what, if we decouple it from value and just make up the value, basically, I guess the size of our ego and military will decide, what the value is. It's like, it hasn't worked out so well for us. And so the ability to own gold, I think it's a great hedge. I mean, the more you own, the better. But like you were saying, many pros suggest, and of course, we're not giving financial advice here. We're just crazy people on the internet. So, be warned, right? But to hedge into gold, I really love it, because the thing is, it will keep its value no matter what happens in the world. And one of the things I was going to just mention is, it's what is it? It's Azerbaijan, and it's not Turkey, Azerbaijan and Armenia. I forget the two countries right now that are at odds. Oh gosh, I feel bad. I forget who they are, but there's two countries that are, and it's making a lot of news. and they're like, we're gonna, we're looking at possible war over there, and they're afraid Turkey could get in and this and that. But I'm watching, and I kind of feel like when I see that conflict, there's this reorganization of the BRICS of like, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and I almost say like throw Syria in there. And of course, you look at that, allegiances are changing. Some say that like maybe Brazil and India are starting to be more Western friendly and getting away from like the Russia China side of things. And so we're seeing like this world is very interesting. It's very crazy. And we look at, and let's face it, wars between governments are going to also be wars of currency, of course. And so if you have gold, I think that you have, if you're hedging the gold to some extent, no matter what happens, the dollar fails or the Australian dollar fails, if we have hyperinflation in any country or around the world, if you've got gold, when the smoke settles, you have the starting point. You will always have value. How does that sound?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, yeah, you said a lot of really interesting things there. Like basically, up until Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, gold was the only really standard international value proposition, oh, apart from silver, the precious metals. Okay, but we could say that they always benchmarked it with gold as being the primary value proposition there. So it was basically, if you owned gold, you had an international value that basically all people, all countries could understand it, because we know that some fiat currencies in the world, a bunch of people don't want them. You can't even exchange them. If you have the wrong fiat currency, a lot of people, you can't even exchange it when you're at the airport, or you get a bad deal. But gold was universal. It has always been. And then when you add to that, as you're saying, when countries are buying it hand over fist, as much as the big powerful countries, it makes you think, doesn't it? It's like, hey, they're not doing that for no reason. Why are they doing that? What's going on here? Is change afoot? Are we on the precipice of a new kind of world? Because you were quoting a whole bunch of historical things there, like so FDR's change in 1933. So basically, obviously, up until then, people were in the US, they were able to own gold and etc. And then basically he made everybody hand it in for $20 per. That was it, $20 per ounce. And then straight away, once they had it all, the government pushed the value to 35 US dollars. And then for the Bretton Woods Agreement in that's what they refer to it as that because of the hotel in 1944, when the countries of the world they got together and there was so much angst and agitation because of the Second World War. They wanted to have a safe, middleman, basically somebody who they could do international trade with. And so the US was by that point, 44, they were the power broker, and they had the most gold. So it was easy. They were like, we have the most gold, we're the most powerful. Let's make the US dollar, which is redeemable for gold, even though our citizens, they can't have it. And so all the countries agreed. That's how the US dollar became the reserve currency. And so it was like that all the way through. And then you're pointing out what Nixon did. And so so all the countries of the world, they liked it that, for $35, they could basically count on doing business with the US and having it redeemable, fully redeemable for gold, every one of those US notes. So what do you think they started doing? They started doing trade. And as the US expanded, they started calling to collect, and they were collecting basically the gold, and they were withdrawing it. And so when too much, in inverted commas, of the gold was withdrawn, what was Nixon going to do? He saw the value of the country slipping out because all these IOU notes, which was what the fiat currencies were, that other countries were able to claim. And he was like, if we keep allowing this, we'll basically lose. I'm not trying to stand up for what Nixon did. I'm just explaining like the thinking behind, and there could have even been other reasons. I'm just claiming sort of like one of the ones. And so he decoupled it. He was like, okay, so guys, guess what? And in a way, it was very, obviously it was quite clever, because in those, what are we talking, like almost 30 years, the US was able to turn themselves into the superpower of the world headed up by their US dollar. So everybody wanted US dollars. So they're able to say to everybody, our US dollars are backed by gold, and everybody wanted them. And so they became, it was a self-fulfilling prophecy. They became their power base. And then when Nixon cut it off, they already had their position. They already had all the, you know, all the weapons, all the connections. They didn't really need the gold anymore to prove themselves, did they? They didn't. They realized, they were like, well, we're already there. We're already the kingpin. So so then he was able to take it off, and nobody changed that tune. Everybody still looked at the US. The US dollar was still the reserve currency. So nothing changed. It's like they were able to keep the gold and keep their position of power. And so that was an amazing deal. And then basically, and those people who were astute, those traders who were astute, they knew what was going to come, because in 74, not only was gold taken off the gold standard for the US dollar, but then they made gold legal again in the US. And then gold skyrocketed in value. And then they had 30 years of people in the US having no clue. It was like, oh, the whole population, generations, had forgotten the value of gold. And so that's where we are now. We're in a world where people have, in some ways, gold seems like a foreign thing. It sounds very exotic. It's like, oh, wow, that's like, how many people do you know that actually have gold? Not many, because people, they don't know how to get it. It seems sort of mysterious. I mean, all of finances seem mysterious. I mean, how many people do we know who's got Bitcoin or whatever? Like, not many people. And gold is in that, even though it's a $10 trillion marketplace, it seemed elusive to people, even though it's been fully available. All the other countries could own it. Like, it's crazy. Like, you know, they could buy it. Like, you know, in India, which is one of the biggest gold buyers in the world, they weren't blocked. But certainly for the almost 50 years, people in the US have been able to buy it. And many of them obviously took advantage of that. And gold had a big run after that. So it's this history of money. So one of the things I really recommend is that people dive into the history of money. It's so interesting because it's the history of power. It's the history of politics. It's the history of all of these things that are going on. The more you uncover what's been going on, it's a big deal, and quite likely big change is afoot. Because why are we seeing now countries, the big powerful countries, getting so interested in cryptocurrencies? Why is China issuing their currency through WeChat as a essentially, that's what it's not true cryptocurrency, obviously, but that's how they're able to explain it. Why is there talk in US politics, you know, in the Congress about a Fed coin? Why are they doing this? Why are they suddenly now, and suddenly, you know, the gold is there? So there were some suggestions, and I'm not saying, because this is entire speculation, that one of the reasons that China was buying so much gold and getting so interested in cryptocurrency is that they were going to make a move for their own digital gold backed. Now, that hasn't happened yet, but could it happen? What would it mean if it happened? And just like the US became the world's reserve currency because it had a gold backed currency, could somebody else do the same thing? I mean, these are interesting moves, and what kind of impact would that have on the world? I mean, there's speculation that the price of gold is actually suppressed, that its actual true value proposition and it is significantly higher. And your listeners should go and research that themselves to find out what those people speculating on that. I'm not saying that is the case, but it's certainly interesting to consider some of these factors.
It absolutely is. I mean, a huge learning experience for me was reading the Bitcoin Standard, which is a lot of crypto people have read that book, and it just gets into a lot about the history of money, how, you know, what is sound money, what's a commodity versus fiat, and it also, of course, gets into, you know, what is Bitcoin, how does it work, and where is its value derived. But just in reading that, I mean, it was life changing. So I think especially people who have an interest in how the world works and an interest in history, yeah, I mean, studying currency, well, that, you know, that certainly is maybe, you know, that and war, if there's a difference, is the history of the world. And it's one thing I like about commodities, but also it's something I like, I really love about Bitcoin. And I'll just stick to Bitcoin. I mean, cryptocurrency is a big statement. A lot of things are cryptocurrency. But the Bitcoin Standard, you look at Bitcoin, one thing I like about it is that it's a currency that's not based on violence. Because if you look at, like, really what what's a fiat currency sort of based on? That government's military supremacy to some extent, that country, that government's control of that country. I've always kind of felt like, and I'm definitely not pessimistic or cynical. It's nothing like that. But I just feel like it seems like fiat to some extent is based on control and violence of a government. Its ability basically to assert the value of that. Where if you look at a commodity, it's a little different than that. But especially look at crypto and, you know, Bitcoin for one thing. Same thing really with commodities like gold, is that ounce of gold or that gram of gold that you have in your hand, or that piece of a Bitcoin that you have in your hand, or that Bitcoin, it doesn't belong to a government. It truly is decentralized. It belongs to the person whose hand holds it. And therefore, nice thing about cryptocurrencies, and we'll get into specifically CleanGold here for sure, but it's that they're not owned by a government. No government really has control over it. They can regulate it within their country, but they can't regulate, let's say, Bitcoin itself or gold as a commodity itself.
Hmm. Well, like what you're saying, like maybe what I'm hearing there is they can't print it. They can't manufacture more of it like they can with a fiat currency. They
Yeah,
can.
they can't manufacture it, but also they can't, how do I put it, where a government or a country will have centralized control of their fiat, which gives them to some extent or a big extent, control over their country's economy and ultimately the people, like, because they're regulating every which way money can possibly move, but where you have Bitcoin, well, all of a sudden you've got international commerce,
Mm. You're saying that because it's something that can be traded between us, like I can just send you
yes,
Bitcoin, there's no intermediary. And if I have gold, I can also do that. And
yes.
so these are outside of their control for transmission, for transactions. That's what you're pointing to there.
Yeah, exactly that. And so a country can try to regulate, but they ultimately can't regulate the asset. So where a government, a country can completely regulate its fiat and completely regulate its banking and the flow of money in that way, fiat currency in that way. But yes, with commodities like gold and then also Bitcoin, they're starting to lose control. And I think that's something that we're seeing in the world. I think definitely anybody who's kind of watching is there's that certain instability that countries are seeing because I think they're freaking out. Like we just had this quite the event here. If one is following the crypto's crash after BitMEX founders execs face CFTC charges. So it's a huge exchange, and one of them got arrested. I mean, they just came down on big time. And that I think basically is governments not liking the fact that these exchanges are somewhat out of their regulatory control. Also, another article I saw, President Maduro, Venezuela seeks opportunities to use cryptocurrency for global trade. Whoa, there's a country that is looking at actually using cryptocurrencies for international commerce to get out of like the international SWIFT system and all. Well, anyway, I don't want to spend too much time going on about how governments control things with fiat, but what I love about cryptocurrency is the fact it's the same thing with hard commodities like gold, is that they exist outside of governmental control. The governments try to control them, but I think when it comes to doing free trade globally, they're the best shot we have. They're the best asset we have to do that, be they hard assets, gold, and cryptocurrency like Bitcoin.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. Like it's basically giving people choice, not feeling locked into having only one mechanism to trade with. Like obviously the bank transfers and your debit card, credit card, all of that is the easiest. But once you actually just show somebody how these other digital assets work, that's when the light goes on. And so even major gold bugs that I know that are heavily into gold and precious metals, they've admitted that it's basically just something that they just have sitting there. Like when they have it, it's not actually transactable. You can't do something with it. And the holy grail would be like, how do we make gold fully liquid for the individual without it being centralized? That's a very interesting proposition. It's like, okay, so a non-centralized liquid gold, it's interesting. And so
That
because then,
and there comes CleanGold IO, what you're doing, you know. Yeah,
yeah,
I don't want to sidetrack us too much, for sure. But I'd love to help people understand that a little bit better, because ultimately, yes, this is a question I wanted to ask. I want to ask all the questions that, well, I think of, but also questions I think most people would have when they first hear about what you're doing. Because I think it's definitely something that we're going to continue seeing in the future. And I think I looked at other projects that are doing similar things. I think you got the best system. I think you're kind of ahead of the game. And this is a new way of doing things. And whenever someone's doing something that hasn't really been done, like a new way of doing it, it's like Bitcoin. I mean, people are like, what happens if the internet doesn't work and all this crap, it's new, and many people don't get it. They will in time, but now the adoption is quicker and quicker and quicker. And so I think when it comes to managing assets like gold, like silver, I think that what you're doing is a way that people can keep it liquid. They can buy it, sell on quick. They can buy and sell it quickly, and they can get that security, that value of a commodity without having to actually have it in their hand, which can be a little bit of a pain, and to some extent a bit of a security risk. I don't myself want a few kilos of gold here in the house. I just don't, So how with the system that you're doing, CleanGold IO, and I think it's very important to note that you are mining it, like you were saying, in a way that is clean. Because I had no idea until I started looking into your project how devastating gold mining is to the environment. It's kind of like aluminum. Aluminum is devastating to the environment.
and to the people and to the communities there, the
Yes,
people mining it, to their health.
to their health. Yeah, and so this is a great way to feel good about the commodity that you have, gold, but also it's a way that you can simply sign up at CleanGold.io and you can buy it. I was wondering, one thing I wasn't sure about is, uh, could you explain a little bit how that connection works between the ERC20 token? So it is the actual Ethereum blockchain that's actually pointing to a gram of gold, and I believe your coin, it's it's in grams, right? So
Yes,
one
per gram.
per
Yep.
what? Yeah, and what's the ticker symbol? What's the
CGTC.
C,
CGTC. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
CGTC. One CGTC equals 1 gram of gold. So what is the actual blockchain? And then also, how is that connection made to the gold? How do I know that this, address on the blockchain points to that much gold?
Okay. So great questions here. So basically, well, we chose Ethereum for the tokenization of the asset to turn it into a digital asset because it was the most ubiquitous. Like Ethereum's like it's an easy choice for that respect. And so right now, even though the mining has begun, so there is mining, and we've produced the first physical gold coins, which you can see videos of on the website cleangold.io. You can see the photos of the coins, etc. But the big scale mining operation, that's still getting ramped up. So that's what we're basically pre-selling the gold. So most of that gold, the vast majority, is actually in the ground. So it's in the ore, the dirt. That's what the ore is. It's the dirt. And so once that's above ground, so essentially your allocation of the tokens, the tokens that you have, that will be, you can use that as proof. So whoever has those in possession, as per the terms of sale, you'll be able to claim that point. So basically the tokens, they just point to the gold. Essentially, yes, it is unallocated right now because the gold is, we're doing something very unusual. If you can find another project that's actually doing a mining operation at a discount for gold that's in the ground for delivery next year as a digital asset, that's a unique offering for the world. And so that's really how, so once that is fulfilled, then you can either have redemption of it, have the physical, or you can maintain it as that digital asset. And so it's really just it's an IOU. It's, that's my gold there. I'd like to claim that. And so in between now and then, you're holding those tokens, and that's your claim. That's your right to have that gold after the mining operation has fulfilled its operations and it's all above ground.
I love that. That's perfect. And right now, uh, and let's see, we'll wrap this up in a few minutes because I'll have had you for an hour quite shortly, you know. And I always try to keep the interviews to a point where people listen to that hour time slot. You know, if I make it a little too long, then they start trailing off. They go, oh, it's too intimidating. I don't want to hear something that's 2 hours. You know, so we're at the perfect point right now where I'd love to wrap this up and maybe have you on again, and we'll just go deeper into other things. But how does the CGTC token compared to, let's say, using Tether, which is like the one Tether equals $1. That tends to be the most commonly traded. Let me rephrase that. Tether is a stable coin for everybody listening. It's the most common stable coin that people buy in and out of crypto with. So one Tether equals $1 or the equivalent in your country's currency. And so but Tether is ultimately linked to a fiat currency for its value. So Tether is a unique entity. And the nice thing about CGTC is that you are back to gold. It's really a more stable asset. Do you see CGTC being on exchanges and traded in and out of cryptocurrencies at some point if people want it? Or do you see it as something that will probably continue to live on the exchange where it does currently? Is it, do you know what I mean? Is it
I get your question. So let me, yeah. So there's a couple of major points you made there. You were talking about the comparison to existing stable coins, which are typically referred to as US dollar backed. And there's a number of them, of which the biggest one obviously is Tether. And however, I don't know about you, I don't know how much you've researched into Tether, but they've never.
It's scary. It's scary.
Okay, cool. I didn't want to. Like they haven't done any audits. There haven't been any audits. And also, interestingly, Tether has released a gold-backed token this year. So something. This space is beginning to heat up. We're seeing some new entrants coming in here in the last 18 months, the last 12 months, the last 6 months. And in that gold report that we've got that you can download from the CleanGold.io website, we've done a little review of them. And so. How Tether's gold backed, and most of them do operate, is you have to redeem them. You have to have 400 ounces of gold, of the tokenized gold, which in today's dollars is over $800,000 worth. And so that's to get it's a 400, that's like a bar of gold, 400 ounces. And so we figured that was kind of out of most people's league. I'm sure you'd agree with that. So with the CleanGold.io, the minimum is 50 grams, which is it's just a bit under 2 ounces. So it's and at a discount as well at the moment. So that gives you that's the redemption level compared to 50. It's just like under 2 ounces versus 400 ounces. And on top of that, you're seeing like Tether Gold, because of its brand with Tether, has actually had a significant amount of, a reasonable amount of gold purchasing happening on that stablecoin. But are they just like their sister currency, which is the Tether Gold US dollar backed one, which hasn't had an audit? Are the dollars really there? Can you prove it? Are the dollars really there? And how about that gold? And so you can talk a big talk. So what we've got with CleanGold is it's yes, it is in the ground still, but this mining operation it's run by New Fortune. You can look them up. That's the gold partner that they've been operating since 2016. There's more than 4 gold mines that they own. This first one is Radio Gold Mine. It's backed up with a JORC report, which is the highest grade level of geological reports out of Australia, with an indication of 28,600 ounces, which is over $50 million US dollars worth of gold just in that one mine. And the latest geological reports are indicating magnitudes above that, like 6 times that amount. And that's only the first mine with the other 4 mines, So that's what we're seeing. It's a conservative offer of what we're seeing is like less than 20% of the gold reserves that's being made available. And yes, it's still being mined. But you can check these reports, you can check these geological reports, there's the videos are there, the photographs of the mining operation, you can check it. And New Fortune is being listed on the Australian Stock Exchange next year. So these are proper, soon to be public companies that are running this. And the clean mining technology that's being listed on that's actually where the clean mining technology itself that doesn't use the cyanide or the mercury, it's being listed on the Singapore Stock Exchange. So here we have a fully legitimate offering that, and on top of that, once the mining is fully underway and we've got to get extracting the gold, it's going to be audited, independently audited, unlike what the tether operation is doing. So you tell me, like, you know, when you're comparing apples with apples, how's this one looking, basically?
No, I like it. And something I like about that you can go to the CleanGold IO and you can sign up if you like know your customer, and then you can buy it. And so I like that that 1 CGTC equals 1 gram of gold, which I think right now is what, like 60 some dollars. And
Yeah,
so I've always been a real fan, especially when it comes to commodities. You know, commodities, hard assets like gold, also like Bitcoin. Big fan of dollar cost averaging, just buying weekly or monthly, you know, whatever suits the individual. And since CGTC is denominated in you know, per gram, it's something most people can afford. You know,
that's why
whether
we
they,
chose that.
yeah, whether they buy it every week, every month, or they buy a couple every, you know, whatever. Everybody's different, but it's an amount that people can work with, and they can actually dollar cost average. And that, I think, especially with commodities, it's great. And this makes it easy. And they have this physical asset that the Ethereum blockchain ERC20 token is pointing to. And that's the nice thing, is that it's really like having it in the bank. It's safe. You know, you've got your keys, your, you know, as long as you have your info backed up there on your exchange, you have your username and password, basically, you're good. Your stuff is safe. And that's something that I like. And I know when people are listening to this, it might seem like, oh, this is a little strange, but I think it's just new. And I'm so glad you could come on and talk to us, because I want people to kind of, and myself also, become more familiar with how we're probably going to do a lot more of our, you know, physical assets in the future. Because already, I mean, you look at like Raven Coin, which is it's a crypto, but it's basically digital assets. They're really kind of way out there ahead of the game on digital assets, from houses to, you know, you name it. And so what you're doing is next. It's new, and you can tell because it feels a little shaky. You're like, oh, I'm not sure. This sounds a little scary. It's just really, really new, you know? And my hope is we're going to get this interview out there, and I hope that we can hook up again before too long, and maybe we'll dive into this, you know, based on feedback that we get from this interview, we can dive into some aspects of this a little deeper.
For sure, that'd be really great. And there was another point you just made before, just to cover, just to close the loop, was you're asking about exchanges, etc.
Yes.
So yeah, so we are in discussions with some, but that hasn't been finalized. Just so basically, at the moment, people would be they'd be logging into their dashboard account at CleanGold.io, and once basically we've, you know, like a lot of, when you're doing essentially a token issuance like this, you know, as soon as we issue the ERC20 tokens to everybody, well, they can do what they like with them, right? And so up until then, it will just be inside the dashboard, basically. So we've got our benchmarks of how much we're selling, and then when people have them as ERC20 tokens in their possession, well, you tell me what you could do with them, because essentially, you know, there are all sorts of exchanges in the world and DEXs, etc. So it's going to get very interesting.
It is going to get interesting. And, you know, I think the important part right now is that CGTC exists, you know, CleanGold IO exists, that you can sign up and you have that physical asset, and it's, you know, linked to a blockchain ID, and, well, I should say an ERC token ID. I dig it. We'll just leave it right there. I think what you're doing is great,
Right.
you know, and we will see how it does integrate with exchanges in the future. But I think the important part is just the project itself, whether and when it does exist on exchanges, other crypto exchanges, we shall see, you know, but the important part is that this technology is rolling out, and that it's happening, and that you can go to cleangold.io and you can get involved. You can check this out, because trust me, it might seem a little bit odd, but it's just really, really new, just kind of like Bitcoin was not long ago. So, you know, Barnaby, thanks for being on the show. Everybody check out CleanGold.io, and we'll get you on again soon. As we get some feedback for this interview, we're going to deep dive into some of the questions that people ask.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for having me here today, Greg. And everybody, have an awesome day. It's exciting times ahead.
It is. Thank you so much for hopping on. All right. Bye.